Today on Drive Theory, we talk about the history and proliferation of trucks and SUVs. We get into the Malaise era quite a bit. We also talk about the 80s and 90s. We talk about luxury trucks, luxury SUVs, fast trucks, and just overall, just multi-dimensional stuff. Welcome to Drive Theory.
Welcome to Car Time.
Car time, it is.
Back on the train.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite looking car that has the wrong drivetrain? So
Ooh, my favorite looking car that has the wrong drivetrain.
yeah, like that the character of the car and maybe your purchasing decision to not get it would have been changed had it been rear wheel drive.
I have a lot. I have a lot of cars for this one.
Yeah.
The Toyota Celica,
Which one?
the latest one.
Latest one?
Yes, the
Yeah.
latest Celica. Some front-wheel drive, underpowered, whatever that doesn't stack up to some of the cool Celicas that were from like the '90s, like the GT4 and such.
Yeah.
And that car looks like a rear-wheel drive car,
It
and it isn't, and it's slow. I hear they're fun, but I've never driven one. I used to want one until I like when I was a little kid. I used to want one because I thought they looked cool, and they don't have the performance to match or the drivetrain to match. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That car looks like a rear-wheel drive car. Although they're pretty funny. Their factory stance is like really like haunched forward,
Yeah.
which is fine. Like I like a positive rake sort of car, but it's the rear ride height on a stock Celica is like super aggressive. And I think I have another answer to this question too.
I've got two for you.
Oh, I'll tell you my other one. Is the last generation of the Prelude. The last generation of the Prelude looks. They never even made a. Was that one of yours?
That's one of mine. Yeah.
It
looks like a rear wheel drive car.
It looks like a rear wheel drive car because it's got the long hood like the Acura Legend.
Yeah.
Is it on the same platform?
I don't know, but but I wonder if it is because the Acuras, most of the Acuras are longitudinally mounted.
Yeah, they were longitudinally mounted engines. It's the front wheel drive, so funny. They you still had you even had all wheel drive Preludes before that one, and they didn't even do that. I feel like I would have owned a Prelude at this point if they made an all wheel drive last generation. I don't know the chassis code or anything. Last generation Prelude.
Yeah.
That's a crime. Honda, of all the good things it does, is capable and is guilty of many crimes, just like that.
Yeah. My other answer is the last generation or second generation Scion TC.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I feel like it doesn't have that rear wheel drive attitude. I think it would be a super cool car like rear wheel drive, but I feel like it's kind of like that Honda Civic type competitor. Like I feel like if the TC and the 10th gen Civic were made at the same time, they would be like genuinely cross shopped. Yeah. And they may have been cross shopped at the time, but I think the last generation TC in the right color looks just as good as the 10th generation Civic because I'm a big 10th gen Civic fan.
I agree to the point where I actually would prefer a TC, the second gen TC over a 10th gen Civic. It just the TC looks a little bit more, I don't know, special. I don't know if that's the right word.
I think it looks more tuner. I mean Scion made it obviously like for the
boy racer.
Yeah, the boy racer like tuner youth, Hot Wheels loving boys. But I think they're really cool cars. I feel like a rear wheel drive one would have been super 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 neat.
Yeah,
maybe like a supercharged one or something.
Yeah. So, okay, one more question. And this question is actually my answer for the question is actually going to lead into what we're talking about this episode. What cars that are rear wheel drive should be front wheel drive?
Oh, none of them. You're asking the wrong guy to be switching drivetrains from the rear to the front. I don't know. Do I have what is your answer? What is your answer to that?
Pickup trucks, man. If you're not going to be towing something with it, there is no reason to have a rear-wheel drive pickup truck with no weight in the rear. But the thing, obviously, I know that it kills towing, and that's why it's rear-wheel drive. But like,
Not only that, but whenever you do put stuff in the back, because if it's a pickup truck, then you're gonna, people are probably gonna put stuff in the bed. You know,
sure, yeah.
you
So
you you want you'll want the drive wheels back there.
right, yeah, no. I see the functionality of it, but like, I mean, most of the time you're just commuting, and so it's like it just makes sense for your daily driver when it's being just a daily driver for it to be front wheel drive, I think. But it does lead into today's episode because we are talking about trucks and SUVs and how
Wait,
trucks.
wait, wait. I have one last answer for the
Oh yeah,
first question.
yeah. Please tell me.
For the front wheel drive car that should be rear wheel drive that I feel like you should have said and you didn't.
Okay.
It's the Ford Probe. Come on.
I actually disagree with you again.
Get out of here.
I
Insane.
rode in Vince's, and that car has so much charm, and the
Yeah.
induction noise is so much fun, and the way it pulls through a corner like only a front wheel drive can do. Just so fun, and it's just so separated from a Mustang of the same era, which I know is what it was supposed to initially be. And I just cannot imagine that car as I can imagine it as all-wheel drive, but I cannot imagine it as a rear-wheel drive car.
That's fair.
It's just
I
too weird.
I,
It's too much of its own thing.
I love the Probe, but I still think it's like, because that's one of my favorite car shapes, RX-7 C5,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Probe. Uh,
What a weird car, man.
and they all look the same. So why not join the ranks of those weird? I mean, you got a rotary, you got a V8. Why not have the V6 thrown in there? Rear wheel drive, pop up and down, melted bar soap,
Right.
sport coupe kind of look.
So another thing is the particular Ford Probe that I rode in. It had like what I'm assuming is some kind of like leak in the intake manifold or one of the intake tubes, and so it had like this straight cut gear sounding squeal every time you'd hit like to go along with the noise, almost like a supercharger. And so every time he'd be rolling through the rears, you just hear like a and it sounded so cool. And I know that it's not supposed to do that, but
I was gonna say, I can have exhaust leaks on any car, from or rear wheel drive.
No, it was specifically intake, and that's what made it so neat, because it was just like, am I riding in a Lotus right now? So,
I do love a good induction noise. I feel like people don't talk about a good induction noise enough, except for the other 350Z owners who buy those freaking pop chargers, so it'll make the like sucking into your teeth sound at the beginning. I've never understood the appeal of a very, very artificially geared induction noise like that, because it sounds like it's trying to be something cool, but otherwise a good induction noise, like Porsche induction noise, is like nothing else.
Yeah. I think.
All right, what are we talking about today, Isaac?
Okay, one more thought.
Okay.
What we're talking about. I don't know if it was me and you that went into this rabbit hole together, or if I just fell into this rabbit hole by myself. But the freaking shaker intakes for the Dodge Chargers and Challengers, it turns out they don't do diddly squat for
No,
the.
they don't do anything. I've complained about this before.
Yeah.
In some people, now I'm not like an expert on this, and everybody that we know knows that I'm not the biggest Mopar fan, and I try not to rail on them too hard, but the shaker is just for looks, as far as I understand.
Cool.
If they're stated, yeah, it does look cool, I guess, but it's not my thing.
It would look cooler if it did something.
I'll tell you how I'm fair. Is I don't like the shaker. I don't care for the shaker look. I think it's funny that there's a little thing up there shaking, and I feel the same way about the Corvette ZR1 than the C6 with the little window where you can see the supercharger. I don't care to see the engine components under the hood. I like vents, and I don't care to see everything down there.
I don't like it, but I guess that is fair. But
Yeah, it
what
was
we're
like
talking about
Lexan or
today,
something.
yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
we are talking about trucks and SUVs and how they have taken over the market and the world. Um, so I'll be focusing more on trucks as I am a simp for trucks, and Tony will be focusing more on SUVs. So which one would you like to start with?
Uh, well, if we're talking about performance SUVs, we can start at the very, very beginning. The Lamborghini LM001.
Was there?
When
I only ever heard of the 002. Is it
so
7?
the one, okay, this is weird. I'm pretty sure the one came after the two. Uh,
Okay.
so just to set the stage, the 00 the 002, it was the Rambo Lambo.
Right.
If you look up Lamborghini truck, if you don't get an Urus, you're gonna get this military looking truck thing.
With a Countach
Um,
engine.
with a V12, a 4.2 liter V12,
Mhm.
making like, oh goodness gracious, that thing weighed like 6,000 pounds, and I don't actually remember how much horsepower it made. Like 362 horsepower. Is that how much the Countach made?
Let's see. Countach, because I don't think they actually made that many. It was either the Countach or the Mura that didn't make that many changes to the engine.
It
But
was 420 horsepower, by the way, and
420.
only about 369 pound-feet. Now, I do have to say, now this is like in
Countach
the
was
late 80s.
375, by the way.
Okay, this is in the late 80s. But the LM002 was unveiled, and I don't know, it went from 0 to 60 in like 7.2 seconds for a 6,000 pound vehicle in like
That's BRZ speed.
in the oh, that's people can get mad at that one. But but 7.8 seconds. Did I say 7.8 or 7.2?
You said
It's
7.2. If it's
okay.
7.8, that's like BRZ speed on an uphill.
So 7.8 is the actual figure.
Okay.
And for honestly, for those numbers all put together, 420 horsepower and 370 pound-feet in a 6,000 pound vehicle, honestly, less than 8 seconds 0 to 60 is not bad.
And another thing too, you probably hear Redline and Countach noises way more in that truck than if you were in a Countach, because the truck has to use all of the engine power to move.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it's really straining. But
Yeah.
I mean, I hesitate to call it a performance SUV as well, even though like it has a high performance engine in it. It's mostly to help it move around.
Yeah.
Lamborghini made it to be a military truck. They didn't make it for any, like it was kind of quick SUV for the time.
Yeah.
But having a V12, having a screaming V12 in a big military truck like that is pretty sweet.
Yeah, that is.
So that like that it wasn't like it was cool, but it's not like breaking any records. People talk about it because it's a novelty, but no one's talking about it because it was beating muscle cars or anything. So
Right. Yeah.
um, if we
That
want
was
to talk about beating muscle cars, then we could talk about the Typhoon, which is the sister car to the Cyclone with
an
an
S.
S.
Mhm.
And when the Typhoon came out, it was really cool because it was, I don't know if you want to call it a muscle truck or not, because it doesn't. It was hanging with the big dogs,
Right.
but it had a boosted V6. I mean, it was just a lowered Jimmy essentially. And I love this thing because it's got two doors and it's low on the ground and it's rapid. It's all-wheel drive, which, I mean, performance cars weren't really all-wheel drive back then, unless you're talking about like a WRX or a Audi Quattro or something. So
Especially not, companies from Detroit were not making all-wheel drive performance
yeah,
cars.
exactly. So this thing was making a lot ish for the time. 280 horsepower, 286. I don't remember. But it's all-wheel drive and pretty decent decently low dry weight. It was lighter than the regular Jimmy. It scoots off the line.
Yeah.
Big fan. But
Um,
the only hangups with it is that it had a pretty sluggish torque converted transmission, and it was a truck. And all they did was lower the suspension. They didn't really do any suspension upgrades. They did give it bigger brakes though.
yeah, and for the time a freakish tire patch, or tire compound. I don't remember exactly what tires were on it, but that was one thing that I read in the reviews. It's just like these tires are really sticky. Okay.
I don't know about this. I don't know about the tires that it used.
Well, the one anecdote that I have for that is that on my end of the podcast, the truck part, GM had a muscle truck of the time, and it was the 454 SS, and the 454 SS got its teeth kicked in by the Cyclone and by the Typhoon.
Not even close.
Right.
Not even close. These were way faster than the muscle trucks.
I didn't realize
454 SS is cool, but yeah. They also weren't really. I don't know what the. So I've never really quite understood the point of the 454 SS, and kind of by proxy the Lightning. I do have something fun on the Lightning though, but I'm sure you could elaborate because they were still quite slow even for the time.
It was about the attitude more than anything.
Yeah, because they're not like cult classics anymore. Like, do you talk about a Cyclone or the Cyclone and the Typhoon still are expensive. Mm-hmm. But 454 SS, you see them ragged out everywhere still. Yeah. I saw one yesterday.
Really?
I did. Oh. I did. It was a crew cab long bed. I don't think long bed, but it was a crew cab 454 SS.
I think that might have been up badged.
Are you sure? Or maybe it was an extended cab.
I think it was a single cab short bed.
Single. Are you sure they only come in single cab?
I wish that
we're gonna do some quick. I'm gonna do some ninja googling real quick.
I wish you would have called me because I would have had you look under it and stuff because they would have had Positrack, so it would have had 14 bolts instead of 10 bolts on the rear diff, and it would have had the trim going all the way around.
Yes. Well, it would have been difficult for me to get underneath it because it was at a 4-way stop sign. And past me. I just saw the big decal on the side, and it sounded pretty good. But I mean,
you see those 454 SSs are up badged all the time.
Yeah, no, that's I recognize that. I could be wrong. I don't know about them much because I only know about cool things.
Well, yeah. Another thing about it is the 454 you can still use it as a truck. The Cyclone, it would be a stretch to say that you could use a Cyclone as a truck because there was no recommended towing capacity for the Cyclone, and there was for the 454 SS.
Yeah, they did, and that kind of happens with performance trucks. Is that they have some, what's the word I'm looking for? Concessions with the suspension to make it lower, and therefore you get less clearance. They can't squat and tow as much. All right, yeah, what I saw was definitely up badged because there wasn't anything but a single cab short bed. It wasn't a long bed, but I'm pretty sure it was at least an extended cab. And the thing is that the decal itself looked factory and worn, so I was like, this seems legit. But I don't know much about it.
Well, it's just so easy to up badge those trucks, and you see them all the time. Like I saw a Centurion. I'm about to get real nerdy here. GMT 400s, also known as OBSs, ran from 88 to 98, technically 99, and that was before crew cab trucks were really a thing outside of like heavy duty trucks. Centurion was a company that did conversions on these trucks, and so you could get a Centurion conversion of a crew cab short bed truck. Really, really cool, really, really rare. I saw one, and unfortunately it was 454 SS up badged, and if had it not been 454 SS up badged, it still would have been a really cool truck because it was a Centurion truck.
I never understood that because people who know the significance of that are going to know that that's bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Like the thing is, you got to understand the level of nerd that you have to be to both recognize that it's a unbadged Centurion and that it's an up badged 454 SS. and it made me.
And then they're going to be mad. And so
I was so mad.
who's your target demographic here, buddy?
I had enough steam coming out of my ears to bake a freaking potato.
Oh,
but yeah, so the with the Typhoon, not to get ahead of ourselves with the Cayenne, but the cool thing about the Typhoon is there was just no other benchmark at the time for what it was. So it's like the Cayenne could be like, okay, yeah, we need to, this is how we can make it handle like a car. And the Typhoon at the time, it was just like, guess we'll try this, see what happens. And it's a truck, handles like a truck, goes fast in a straight line, doesn't turn, but like the fact of
it was
it
rapid. It was one of the fastest cars you could buy at that point.
And I have another example of this. So you were talking about you got talking about the LMN LMO1, LMO2 Lambos.
I do get them confused, so I could be wrong. It could have been 01 and then 02, but I if I remember correctly, it's like they came out with the LMO 002 and then the LM001.
I wonder if that's the difference between the one that has the truck bed in the back versus the one that doesn't, because they called like the H1 Hummers the Alphas, the ones with the truck beds. So I wonder if it has something to do with that, but I don't know. I just looked up the truck stuff for this episode and stuff. I know nothing. Truck history. Trucks have kind of always been around. Bootleggers had a lot to do with it, and especially the moonshine era, and just generally like the Model T was converted a lot to trucks. But that's the boring part of it to me. The cool part started after World War II when you could get a okay. One thing I learned while researching this is that Dodge, I'm not really a Dodge guy, but Dodge had a huge part to play in standardizing trucks. And their Power Wagon went from 1946 all the way up into the 60s. And Dodge was also the first passenger civilian vehicle to have four-wheel drive in a production vehicle. You could, every other vehicle other than like a Willys Jeep or a Roxor, which wasn't a civilian vehicle at the time, you had, other than those vehicles, you had to get it converted like it was an aftermarket thing, and Dodge was the first to do that. And at 60s and 70s were kind of a renaissance period, because trucks went from being this piece of farming equipment into being a farming equipment, and also let's take this to town kind of thing. Not like a date night, but just like as a regular driver. So you got amenities like seatbelts, radios, some of them even got assisted steering and like headlights and stuff like that, So it's like you started seeing this shift towards it not only being this one-dimensional thing with a flat bed, like a ditch witch, for example, it is a one-dimensional thing. And but then you start seeing like in the 60s and the 70s,
the internet company leaves one ditch witch in my front yard, and suddenly you reference it in the podcast. Leave the ditch witch alone.
This is the cost of social media.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was such a funny snap, though. I wish I would have said that.
Yeah, Laurel. It made Laurel laugh. She never laughs at my stuff.
So, but you get what I mean, though. It's no longer this one-dimensional thing. You get to the 60s and the 70s, and then you have stuff like the F100 gets the Ranger option, and that can come factory with a tent or a camper shell. And then you have stuff like the Cheyenne and the C10s and the K10s, and that's a whole thing too. But then you get to the 80s at the last little bit of the C10s run, and that compared to today, those C10s, the square bodies is what they called. I have way more extensive knowledge with GM than I do with the other stuff, so I'm going to kind of hang around with that most of the time. But like you get to the 80s trucks, and that's when you see it shifting from really being a functional passenger vehicle that is a work truck to being a lifestyle vehicle. And that's a huge shift. So 1988 comes, GMT 400 OBS revolutionizes it, because you could get extended cab in a non heavy duty vehicle. You could get four-wheel drive as a Z71 package, not just the Cheyenne and stuff like that. You could get, and people in the comments, please correct me. I know there's a lot of stuff I'm missing. then you get your stuff like Ford and Dodge were doing the same things. You were getting different stuff like that. 454 SS came around. Then people were just, and then, because they were just like, holy shit, you can put Positrack in these trucks. And then, so you get the Lightning, the 454 SS, which again, not so much fast, but a lot of attitude.
Faster than a regular pickup truck.
Faster than a regular pickup truck for no reason. That's kind of the big thing, is like, why get a 454 SS if you just need a work truck? And then to fast forward even more from that, 1999, Denali comes out.
Yeah.
Denali changes the world for trucks. Denali is now like the Lincoln freaking Navigator of trucks.
I was gonna say, you're coming very soon after luxury SUVs started becoming a thing with the Lincoln Navigator and the Escalade and stuff.
Street SUVs like the original Explorer.
Right. It's SUVs that you use to comfortably haul your rich family around in. And then trucks started going like, okay, well, there are plenty of blue collar peacocking Americans who have a lot of money and want a nice truck. It's almost like a status thing to buy a luxury pickup truck.
Yeah.
The most of the time, even back then, and most of the time now, is you're not going to use it for pickup truck things, and that's okay, because like the statistic now is that like most Americans, like on average, Americans who own pickup trucks will use it once to tow something once a year, or use the bed like some super low number of times a year. But if you already have it and you like how it looks, I am not going to demonize somebody for doing something or for purchasing a vehicle that is nice that also looks the way they want it to look.
Right.
I think that's fine. And the same case is 23 years ago whenever all this started happening, people were getting used to the idea of luxury practicality or whatever.
Yeah. I guess to further continue my extremely abbreviated and full of holes history of this stuff is, you also had the Lincoln Blackwood. Can't forget about that. Commercial failure at the time, but cultural icon still to this day.
If you say so.
I guess the term is lost leader, and that needs to be a whole different episode of like the best lost leaders or our favorite lost leaders.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, absolutely.
I know we talked the whole time about the LFA, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. But you also had stuff like 2008, the introduction of the Raptor. That flipped my world upside down. I'm not going to say it flipped the automotive world upside down, but
I wanted a Raptor since it came out.
I was shook about that car. The fact that they brought a truck to SEMA, took the same truck to, was it the Baja 1000, and placed third?
Yes.
That's awesome. And then, for the next 10 years, they dominated, and they, it's still like the muscle truck, and now you've opened up the segment of T-Rexes, and you've got TRD Pros, and that's the other thing.
Don't forget Chevy's hat in the ring.
Do they have a hat in the ring?
ZR2. That's what they say it is. That's what they say is the competitor to it. And the 6.2 makes similar power to the Raptor. Yeah, that's what they say is the competitor. I'm not the one saying that this is a comparable truck. It's just that they have said, I'm pretty sure, we're not making a Raptor competitor because the ZR2 is our Raptor competitor. Am I crazy? That's the Silverado. The Silverado comes in the ZR2, right?
It does come in the ZR2.
Yeah.
You're right, and you're also right in your assessment of the marketing, but their marketing and their effort is weak sauce.
No, I agree.
Absolutely weak sauce. So like the suspension, great. The flow tie, whatever. But I
think the flow tie is cool. People.
Okay.
People talk about the flow tie. I like the flow tie.
The flow tie is not cool because they slapped it on some off-roading SUV. What do you need a flow tie on that for?
I just think it's cool. just concept wise.
So the ZR2, my problem with the ZR2 is that as soon as they started offering the ZR2 with the 6.2, they stopped offering the Trail Boss with the 6.2. And
Yes.
so now they are deleting options from their lesser trim model stuff to force you into the upper trim model stuff. And like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's what Honda and Acura are doing right now.
yeah, and that's weak sauce too, man.
Yeah, it's
Whereas,
pretty weak sauce.
especially because it's even more weak sauce than Honda and Acura. Because okay, I'm getting worked up about this. Because Dodge put out the T-Rex. The T-Rex is their answer, and then
Ford has to answer. Like Ford has to come up with the Raptor R, which is awesome. And so no one's even paying attention to the like the ZR2 culturally is not a Raptor fighter. It isn't.
Right. It never has been, but the thing is like the goalposts have changed. So I want a ZR2 because okay, I had a 2018 Z71. That was before the body style update to the 2019 to the current. And the current body style is like you get a Z71 package, but you also have to get the custom or the Trail Boss package or the insert. 2018 and 2014 through 2018, you could just get the Z71. And though 2018 and before, if you got a Z71, you got the beefed up suspension, you got the off-road goodies without having to get any extra trims and extra stuff. And that truck was pretty pricey when it was new, but on the used market, it depreciated and it was a good deal. The ZR2 is going to be you are going to get so much truck for the money because of its off-roading prowess on the used market. But like to call it a Raptor fighter,
and I will admit I'm not 100% sure that that's exactly what they said, but it's at least heavily implied that it's the Raptor.
It is heavily implied. Yeah, they don't have the balls to say it. There's because it's GM is this giant monolithic conglomerate, and they're not going to outright say something like that in the same way that Dodge is outright talking about their EV stuff, because GM is very characteristically conservative in moves as far as what they do. Like the C8 Corvette is uncharacteristic for GM, and that's why it's working. I'm such a big GM guy, and that's why I'm shitting on them right
now.
Yeah. But like, yeah. So, but the ZR2, it is an interesting point of like, it is an interesting point of contact for what a truck is today, because you get in a ZR2 or you get in a GMC AT4, which is a lower trim spec from a ZR2, but it has the same engine and stuff like that. And that is a luxury truck, man. That's a luxury vehicle. You get in that thing and like the doors are heavy and you close it and you can't hear anything. It's got great sound deadening.
Yeah.
It no longer has a column shifter. There's especially no longer a 3 on the tree where the freaking steering knuckle gets locked if you try to dump the clutch through an intersection. Don't ask me how I know that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds awfully specific.
Yeah, really specific, but okay. It's got the console shifter, and Ram has completely done away with the actual like shift motion. They've gone with a knob, and which I'm not saying those are good things or bad things. I'm referencing those in making the point of these trucks are becoming more and more lifestyle vehicles and family cars, not just something. So it's like at the same time as I had the 18 Z71, I had an 88 C2500 heavy duty truck, 8-foot long bed. The 2018 had a 3 3/4 foot long bed, less than half the length. I am kind of ashamed to say I never took that truck off road, and I used the bed twice because in my head it was too nice to do anything to.
Yeah, I remember.
I needed to use a truck
about that. Yeah, because the paint was really, really nice.
Paint was nice. Shape. That's why I got rid of the truck. Was because I couldn't use it because I felt handicapped. And anytime I needed to use a truck, I used the work truck, because the work truck, God knows what's happened to that work truck. I'm not going to kill that thing. And so
that's a whole nother. That's an entire
episode, man.
Work truck, yeah, absolutely.
That is an odyssey. I'm sorry, I got us way off into the weeds. There has been a distinct shift though for the past 24, really 28 years, um, going from a utilitarian piece of equipment to being a lifestyle vehicle. You know, 20 years ago, sorry, this was the case 20 years ago, 28, 30 years ago, there wasn't anyone, and I'm not going to say who this is, but there wasn't anyone who had a daily truck, a date night truck, and a work truck. That kind of thing did not exist. And we live in the market now to where that does exist. And those trucks are comparable to people comparable to enough people. It drives enough like a car, and it has enough road manners and enough livability to where it placates the need for a daily driver that isn't a truck or an SUV. And I think you can speak a lot more on that because SUVs, holy crap, have SUVs come a long way.
Goodness gracious.
God, I had a 90. Okay. I got one more story about an old ratty car that I had. I had a 95 Blazer. First car I ever did a burnout, and first car I ever did a donut in. And let me tell you, first of all, that's not the car to do it in. but I bought that car, ended up blowing the engine up in it, and like just a couple other things to it. It was fine. It had 2 cup holders. It had 8 ashtrays in it.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. It was tiny, but it was body on frame. It was a truck. It had a tailgate and everything. My fiance has a 2019 Blazer. Those cars, I wouldn't even believe that it was from the
Couldn't
same.
be more different. Absolutely.
I wouldn't believe it was from the same OEM if I on it. I mean, like, it's insane. That car her truck, it's not a truck. That Blazer drives better than pretty much every car that I've ever had.
Really?
Oh my God. I mean, it's, just because my frame of reference is not current cars, it's like that crossover, it just drives like a car. So it's like in my head, I'm like, of course I see why Erica wanted this, because this drives like a car, but it has more space and it's angry and it has like personality, quote unquote, and so, but
that's pretty important too, is that SUVs have evolved into something that used to be, ladder frame,
right,
body on frame, trucks with bed covers, into just big cars, and that's fine, because people have wanted to sit higher, and also for it to drive like a smaller vehicle, i.e. easy. So that's just kind of the evolution of that. I'm just, it's just weird. I think that we've had to reuse badge names, that used to mean something totally different, because the Blazer, had something totally different before.
That was the original ZR2, and it was a good ZR2. That was a cool car. That was a ZR2 when it wasn't trying to compete with something that was out of that. The ZR2 is a woods crawler, rock crawler. Raptor T-Rex are Baja balls to the wall racer, and but they're cool. But
you kind of see that, I don't know, de-evolution in almost like a parallel sense in the current Bronco, because you get the Bronco, which is awesome, and then you get the Bronco Sport, which is you reusing an old badge name, also a new badge name, and something that isn't, doesn't have the spirit of what the Bronco was for 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet, I don't know the numbers, you probably do, but the Bronco Sport, I bet that outsells at 2-1 with the real Bronco.
Easily. I don't know the numbers, but I can tell you it easily, because I see quite a few of those.
Yeah.
And they're good cars, don't get me wrong. Like, they're good. Like, if it was named something else, it would be a great car, because they're also, pretty competent off-road as well. But it's no Bronco.
Dude, new Bronco
stands
so
sport.
bro,
yeah, absolutely.
So good. I watched a review video on the new Bronco, especially the two door, and because that's the one that I really want. And it's got this feature, you probably already know about this. I may have actually already talked to you about this, but it's got this feature to where if you're trying to make a tight turn in four-wheel drive, it drags the rear wheels to tighten up that. And like that's so cool. It's so freaking cool. Like, oh, that's so neat. And so that there I'm really not trying to be an old man yelling at the clouds about this kind of stuff, because there are companies like the Bronco, or like there are companies like Ford, and GM is still doing really cool stuff. I'm not trying to say the ZR2 is a bad thing, but I think the de-evolution, I think that's a good way to put it, or like retrograde, or whatever, however you call it. I think that's an interesting thing because, okay, I have to go back though, because we started talking about the Typhoon and performance SUVs and stuff.
Yeah.
There is an evolution of SUVs, and one of them is performance. And
yes.
chiefest among them is one made by a German company that is really good at making rear engine cars.
I'm gonna be honest, the Germans just did performance SUVs the best, period. Once they started doing them. So the first performance SUV is coming back to Mercedes before we go back to Porsche. Mm-hmm. Is the ML55, mm-hmm. And I think the year 2000, because they stuffed a V8 in it, but that thing was an off-roader. Like that, it was the ML, big luxury SUV that could do off-roading. They did a supercharged V8 in the ML55, and it made like, I don't know, 450 horsepower. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah. It was like in 2000, Mercedes was like, hey, let's just put big engine in the ML55, big supercharged engine, and it can, it's a rock crawler. It's very capable. It's very powerful. Very cool car. Very popular at the time whenever it came out. It was groundbreaking in the same way that the Cyclone and the Typhoon were groundbreaking. But here's something that I don't know if you knew this or not, but in 1999, what could have been the first performance SUV was whenever the second generation Lightning came out, SVT had built an Expedition with the same powertrain, 360 horsepower, same underpinnings. The Expedition, wait for it, the Thunder. This is real. They made one. They didn't make it.
So cool.
They did not make it. They did not make it. They did not make it to production. Mm-hmm. But the SVT CEO that's at that time, I think Joe Corletti, mm-hmm. Or Corletto, I don't quite remember his name, but he said that, and I think this was in reference to the Typhoon and the Cyclone. But he said that SVT doesn't just stuff a big engine and lower a car. It's a completely different car from the ground up. And the reason he said that is because, like, the Typhoon and the Cyclone, I mean, other than being lowered, I mean, it was, if you got in it before turning it on, it's the exact same car, But SVT cars SVT trucks and cars got special interiors. They got special suspension. The Lightning had a special suspension for the F-150, the first and the second generation.
Love the second generation.
The Expedition, the Ford Expedition had a skid pad rating or whatever, G-force rating of 0.65, the regular Expedition. The SVT Expedition that they made had a skid pad at 0.87.
What?
Yeah, this thing was nuts. There's pictures of it. It looks sick. If you want to do
Expedition to that?
Expedition, dude. A 1999 or early 2000s Expedition. This thing was nuts, and you can build one. Joseph Corletto or Corletti or whatever his name was, said, "Hey, it's super easy to build one. Just take a Lightning and stick all the bits into an Expedition, and you got a Ford Expedition Thunder, essentially." So this thing would have been really cool because the lightning was cool. The second gen lightning was really cool. This thing would have been nuts.
Imagine you get an expedition, throw the suspension bits onto it from the lightning, second gen lightning, and then you get the V10 from like the excursion.
Okay, to be fair, that V10 sucks. It makes like 310 horsepower, and
I did not realize it was that low.
Oh no, yeah, it makes a crap ton of torque, but that thing, there's a reason that's not a popular swap engine.
Well, that and then the horrible unreliability from that.
Yes, they are also catastrophically unreliable, but that didn't stop. Oh my god, that guy who made the 458 swapped BRZ
Oh gosh,
6.
dude.
Oh my god, I cannot remember his name.
We need to have an episode on just like the worst mechanical engines of all time. Just like the most, like, I don't know, like the Triton V10 needs to be on there. I guess the 6.0, speaking 6.0 V8, but it was like they made a really good engine, but they just didn't put enough bolts on it to keep it together.
Fair enough, yeah. But this isn't that episode. We won't get into that. Anyway, okay. As the SPT Thunder, one of my favorite cars that was never made.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one, and I mean, there's probably a couple out there that people just put together, that cobbled together from like wrecked lightnings and stuff. But super into it. But then, you had the ML55, and then Porsche comes along and completely shakes up everything, which I think is the which I consider to be the first sports SUV. Because first of all, it was fast as hell. They put like a 520 horsepower twin turbo V8 in it. There was a couple Cayennes you could buy, but the best one that you could buy was unbelievable. Just not because of the straight line performance, but whenever it came out, people were like, "This drives just like a sports car." It's this tall SUV. It's an ugly SUV. I don't know how popular of an opinion that is, but oh my god, first generation Cayenne.
I think it's a pretty safe opinion.
Safe opinion.
Yeah. I don't know of a lot of people who defend the looks of the first gen Cayenne.
But we got a 4.5 liter twin turbo V8 in this freaking big old thing, big SUV, that you can carve out the back roads in. It has a very competent transmission, which kind of separates it from even the Lightning and the and the Thunder and the Cyclone and the
Lightning, Thunder.
It had a top speed of like 168 miles an hour, which is,
oh my god, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, think about it. In the early 2000s, 520 horsepower is like it's like an insane amount of power. Yep. And then going like approaching 170 miles an hour in a like that's as fast as a Corvette, and you're in a big people mover. So I've never driven a first generation Cayenne, but I'd love to. I mean, it's just, I'm sure it's just a really, really cool experience.
There's a spec of, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's a spec of the first Cayenne that I really like, and I believe it's a diesel. You could get one in a diesel, and you could also get one with a 2-speed transfer case with true 4-wheel drive.
Yes.
And is that the same chassis as the ones that you're talking about?
Yes. So the interesting thing about the Cayenne is it uses it's not like a truck. It's not like a truck chassis.
Okay.
But
like unibody, I guess.
It has an independent rear suspension. But which contributes to the handling, obviously. Right. And it was kind of one of the first SUVs to not like be using leaf springs in the back and a ladder frame. But it was still the idea was to make no compromises because you could take it off road still.
Gotcha.
Even the 4.5 liter twin turbo V8 version, which I think was the Turbo S. I don't know Porsche that well. but you can go off road. You're supposed to be able to go off road, and it was the idea. The ML55, you could go off road in it. That was the whole idea. But this was a sports SUV that you could just not do some super hardcore rock crawling, but be pretty confident
Right.
or competent in the trails.
Yeah. Well, for the, one thing I was thinking about, obviously true four-wheel drive, there's really something to be said for that. But if it doesn't have a ladder frame, it's not a repeatably off-road thing beyond overlanding. But like for that, that's such a nitpicky thing for that to be the one compromise that vehicle makes. Like the Cayenne, what a multi-dimensional vehicle. Like it, I think that's got to mark the modern era of like the Aston Martin DBX and like, oh gosh, any Mercedes. I don't want to get into another Mercedes tangent, but any of them.
Really, any of them. But you have the G55 following that sort of thing. The
Right.
G wagon wasn't always a performance thing. Now, you buy a new G wagon now. You can't get a non-performance version of the G wagon.
Well,
But that wasn't the case back then.
well, I know you say that, but wasn't the first G wagon, wasn't that a rally car?
The first G wagon was a military car.
Okay, I might have just seen a different, seen like a headline or something. I don't know. I don't know how they got in my head, um, but yeah, no, you're right. Like it's the G wagon. Every video that I see of a G wagon doing what it's meant to do, I'll never see one doing it in real life because it's a G wagon. It's not going to do anything off road. But the ones that, but it can do anything off road and it can do anything on track. And the videos that I see of that are genuinely mind-boggling. Like you could take a stock suspension G-Wagon to Moab and it's hanging with the rental Jeeps out there.
It's hanging with the purpose-built dune crawlers, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like out jumping them while massaging your back. Referencing a particularly popular YouTube video that is very good. And it's crazy. So, and the same thing, another thing is like trucks have also gotten quite versatile as well. I mean, not to the point that SUVs have. SUVs are really I think SUVs are the most what am I trying to say? Multi-dimensional vehicle.
Okay. Yeah.
Beyond a Rivian R1T. But trucks did start being extra pretty far back, such as the oil crisis times, the dark times, as it were. There were a lot of rules saying what engines you could put in what cars during the Malaise era of vehicles. And so that was a sad time. If you ever get Tony, or the audience member, if you ever get time to read some of these reviews from this stuff, it's some sad stuff, man.
Yeah, because I mean, like it's if we started having to put big engines that have much less power in cars, like in this coming decade, because we're used to a era where we were kind of going crazy. Yeah. The Malaise era, the oil crisis era came right after. I mean, we started figuring out muscle cars, and then everything lost its charm.
Yeah. I was talking to. I'm sorry, I keep on interrupting you. What were you saying?
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was talking just the other day. Erica saw a 1982 Corvette, and that's like the last C3 Corvette, and it has the Crossfire injection sub 200 horsepower V8, and like, what a fall from grace, man, from the early C3s. And that's every car from back then. I'm kind of scooping myself because the next video that we're putting out actually is probably going to come out before this one does, because I don't release these in order. But it's like there's a Car and Driver magazine or report on the car that we're shooting this weekend, and the title of the review is the Corolla SR5 embraces mediocrity. And like, that's heavy, dude. Yeah. And it said good things in the article. Like, I saw another review from the Malaise era, and it was just like, I forget what it was, but I think it was something along the lines. They said that the car was it was an affront it was an affront to everything that engineering stood for.
Goodness gracious, what car
And
was
like,
this? You don't remember?
I don't remember what car it was, but that was
An
like
affront to everything engineering. That's
it was an
impressive.
affront to everything engineering stood for, and I was like, oh my god. But
That's intense.
there was a few loopholes to the stuff. One of them had to do with weight and what kind of vehicle. So you could put a pretty hot motor into a pickup truck and enter the world's first muscle truck, and it was the Dodge Lil Red Express.
Oh yes.
Was the fastest production vehicle in America in 1979.
Really?
It was. That's the
Because it was
one.
the only thing you could put that much power into, or
Yeah.
something of that size.
I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember reading that it took muscle cars in the 90s to get to the same quarter mile speeds as the Little Red Express, and that's the one that has like the smokestacks on the side, like an
Yeah,
18-wheeler.
smokestacks, man.
And so
I wish you could buy a truck now that had factory smokestacks on behind the cab.
I don't, but I.
I do.
But
That'd be hilarious. I wouldn't buy it, but I wish you could.
so would your
It's
dream spec
principle.
truck? Would it just be like smokestacks and a
I just said I don't want the smokestacks. I just wish you could. I just wish it was possible so I could see it on the road.
I'm going, if I ever get in a position to get you a truck, I'm specifically getting you one with smokestacks on
Good.
it.
Good. I wouldn't expect any different.
Right. But one thing that you said, there's one thing about trucks too, is that you said this is not an original thought to me. This is a Tony thought.
Oh gosh, I wonder if it's an
That
original thought at all. Go ahead.
and you said that there is no fake vents on a truck. Every vent is functional on a truck.
Oh, I sent this as a Snapchat. I was looking at all the trucks on my lot, and I was like, I don't see a single fake vent here. Everything here, like, because they all have these big ass grills these days.
Yeah.
And there's no blockages in them, and air flows like little vents in the bottom, vents on the sides, the giant grill. I mean, half the cars with giant grills, which half the cars on the market have giant grills these days.
Yeah.
Especially luxury cars will have a huge portion of it blocked off, or it's a camera or something. But trucks use all that airflow. I mean, at least from what I can gather now. Flow tie. But yeah, that was an observation that I made randomly one day, and I decided to send a Snapchat to you and the boys about it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy to see where stuff has gone. How big things have gotten, how fast things have gotten, how competent everything is now. Like, this is a bit of a hot take, but I mean, the first gen Forerunners were a completely different animal from what the Forerunners are today. But the TRD Forerunners up today will run circles off road around those old off road.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just technology, and also, competition. Just kind of driving things forward. Like we kind of complained about cars like losing the plot, for the just as comfort and practicality and sitting high and boringness kind of became priority in people's lives and in the profit charts of boardroom members deciding what car to build next. But there's still sick cars who have not lost the plot, and the Foreigner is an example of something that has steadily improved over the past 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't done much in the past like 10-ish years, but but yeah, no, I mean, but that you're right though. That's the case, and that's the case with everything. Is just like you get an Xterra Pro 4X, and that is a very, very capable vehicle that both you and I have spent lots of time in, and a Rivian R1T runs absolute circles around that. There's just no competition, but it's like there is something to be said for new vehicles and how I think part of the reason why you don't see a lot of people using their trucks to their full potential, and like there's so many lifestyle vehicles, quote unquote, more so than like actual like off-roaders and work trucks and stuff like that, is just the fact that like um you know, the because they're more multi-dimensional, they're that gatekeeping element of having to put up with compromises for a vehicle in order to use its functionality just don't really exist that much anymore. Like
No, you can have multiple things in one.
exactly, yeah. And so that's, you know, you see stuff like um you know, a current 2500, it is massive and it's, in my opinion, too big. But you see people, there are people who have that truck that will never use the enormous towing capacity that it has, or will never take their AT4 2500 off road, which they probably shouldn't, because that thing, you know, you need to have a road course. You'd have to go to an off-road park that's the size of the Hudson Bay just to, you know, just to be able to fit that thing. But like, you know, you don't have to put up with the same plight and the same discomfort of even a 1988 2500 or a 1978 or, you know, like a 1978 T30 or something like that. And it's,
Yeah.
so I think that there is, I not only is it a cultural shift into lifetime vehicles and into, you know, an image of a blue collar, of a tough, you know, personality driving the car, but it's also just the fact that like you can have, you know, someone who is someone with a first gen forerunner is putting up with a lot more than someone who's driving a current gen forerunner, even though in the current gen forerunner has the same capability, you know. And I think that's another piece of context to the proliferation of SUVs and trucks. It's just like, why wouldn't you as a consumer put your money towards in excess of capability that you need, and also a comfortable ride in car? And I don't think it's just
Or a fast car, or all three. You know.
exactly, yeah. um you know, I generally like when excess is that accessible. that's a it's kind of, I wish I could have thought of a better way to say that, but when excess is more accessible, as a consumer, there's, you know, sedans don't make as much sense as SUVs do. And yeah, I just think that's kind of where we're at, you know. I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I don't know if I had a point going into it, but um yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bunch of just posers. I do think that's part of it, but
It
you know,
is part of it. But when it comes down to it, I mean, there's preferences on whether people prefer to drive a sedan. I run into this a lot at work. I I do not have children yet. I intend on having two children. That would be ideal for me.
yeah,
And I have a sedan right now. And if I could have a fast sedan, that would also be nice. And I can have a family, like if it was just me, I can transport my family, me, my wife, and my and two children who grow up to be 18 years old. That can all be done in a sedan. But I run
yeah.
into people at work who are like, I have two kids. I can't fit them in a sedan. I need an SUV. What does that even mean? You can fit four people in my car.
Mhm,
And you can fit four people and all their crap in my car if we were going on a road trip. But
mhm,
some people are just some people will just not admit that they prefer to sit higher, or prefer like the safety or comfort or like uh anxiety reducing elements that having an SUV will give you. They'll
right.
just say that they'll just say that the family won't fit. You got one or two kids, you know. There are some people who need an SUV, like who need like a three-row SUV because
Right.
they have four kids. But this isn't the case a lot of the time.
Hmm.
So there are people like me who can do a sedan, but then they want the SUV, and then they want exclusivity. So they want, and they also want comfort. So then they want a nice expensive SUV. and then they want exclusivity and comfort and speed. So then they want a fast SUV, and so then you start getting into then you start getting into the muscle SUVs like the SRT8 Cherokee, and then
Let's
uh,
go.
and then you start getting into the and then you start getting into, oh, I got 4 kids, but I want a fast exclusive SUV. So then you get into the German 3-row SUVs, which I'm pretty sure the Germans did first. You got the Dodge Durango SRT variants now, which are cool. But the GL63 came out in 2016, and then you could move your family of 6 very very quickly,
Yep.
or family of 7 very very quickly, and you have this really cool big loud almost 600 horsepower SUV you can put everybody in. Then you have the X7M, and then like I said, you have the Dodge Durango 392 and the Hellcat, and uh, it all gets crazy and crazy. And whenever you think about it, it's like, what do you need a 600 horsepower SUV for? Because most people in their right mind aren't going to be aren't going to be transporting their family 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Right.
There's no reason to, because whenever I just have my fiance in the car, like I'm a little more like safety minded. If I got my freaking 5 kids in the car, then I don't know. I don't want to drive like a hooligan. I like driving like a hooligan by myself or with a friend in the car who appreciates hooliganism.
Yeah.
Um, but
That's built different, bro.
as much as I love the GLS 63 that I have, and the GLE 63 that I have, that I've driven and have experience in, I don't know if that's the version of those SUVs that I would get, even if I had all the money in the world. I mean, of course, they're obscenely expensive, but me, I, I'm a business owner, and I have 6 million Airbnbs, and I make $1 million a month. I need to write off this 6,000 pound vehicle on my taxes. I want something cool. I want something fast. I'd probably just get a regular GLS or a regular X7. Like maybe something with a larger powertrain, but I don't need the AMG suspension. I don't need the AMG uh powered hand built powertrain, because like I'm not going to try to race Hellcats on the highway. At least
Mhm.
I don't think I would. I consider myself a little bit more responsible than I actually end up turning out to be most of the time. Uh,
That's
but
awesome.
like, once you start descending like that, I mean, people buy them.
Mhm.
But I just don't understand why. Most of the time, it's some you are you a real estate agent who needs to get from place to place at felony speeds with a bunch of signs in the back? Like,
Right.
what's the I'm as a salesperson, I don't know who the target audience is.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. Well, I think we've about covered it though. It's just cars have also improved in their own ways, and I'm sure we'll have other episodes for that. But I think the point is trucks and SUVs are just they just keep getting better and better and more viable to larger groups of people. And
I mean, you can't even the we didn't even get into electric. Well, you mentioned the Rivian a couple times, but like we have completely blown away the capability of SUVs and trucks with the electric space now, because you you increase the capability so much by making these things, except for towing. That's a big thing for people. You can increase the towing capacity, but you can't increase the towing range, and or
Mhm.
like you heavily decrease the actual range, and that's a big thing with people. But when it comes to off-roading and actual like payload strength and torque and all that good stuff, I mean, like you are reaching the next level with the electric stuff, and that is, I mean, that kind of thing is going to be very accessible to people now.
We'll
And
have
you
to,
you have increased capability.
yeah, and we'll have to save the electric stuff for another episode where we can really get into it because
Yeah, no,
that's some
yeah.
good stuff.
Want a little
But
teaser.
yeah, but yeah, but I think that's it. It's just it started in the 80s and the 90s. And then automakers just started getting it right and hitting it more and more and more. Not that cars haven't been getting it right, but yeah, I mean, that's really it. Yeah. So next episode, we're going to do our first Q&A episode. So we've been compiling a list of questions and stuff like that, questions and comments from our viewers and friends of what they would want us to answer. So we'll get into some of that. We've got some funny ones, some smart ones, and some other ones. And so we'll be getting into that stuff. Any final thoughts, any closing thoughts or slogans you'd like to impart with us?
No, I would like to specify that I actually do like performance trucks and performance SUVs. I don't think I actually said my opinion on them, but I am a big fan the uh, of the engineering and the concept of a giant fast car. I said I don't know who they're for, but as someone who has driven them and can drive them without the burden of owning one, I think they're cool as hell. Going 0 to 60 in the low threes in a giant, giant body vehicle is hysterical.
Yeah. I want a Shelby F-150, like the single cab short bed one.
Oh yeah.
I want it so bad. But the weird thing about it is like you can only get them in like the work truck trim with the halogen headlights, the non-LED headlights, and like the you get all the performance stuff, but you have the base model truck, and which that's okay with me, but it's just a weird price point that you're charging like 6 figures for something, and so the person who's going to pay that much probably cares about DRLs and stuff like that. We didn't even mention stuff like the Santa Cruz and crossovers and Utes and stuff like that. Now the Maverick and the Santa Cruz, those are other things that are taking off as the lines continue to get blurred of what trucks are, what lifestyle trucks are, and
it's a return to small trucks, but I focused on the performance side of these vehicles. These are not performance trucks.
Small is relative.
Yes, but they are smaller than even the Tacoma and the Frontier, which used to be small trucks.
Yeah.
And so it is a return to kind of the small truck concept in a way. They're not they're not trucks. I mean, they are trucks, but they're kind of crossovers with the back cut off. But
yeah,
I think it's perfect for a wide range of people. But that's a whole different conversation.
You're right. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Yeah. Well, I reckon I will see you next time for the question or for the Q&A episode. And anyone who's made it this far, thank y'all for watching Drive Theory and hanging out with us. If you have any questions or comments or any thoughts or fact checking for us, please let us know. Just be nice.
So we just went through.